Hey guys, NJ here. Today we're having a look at this HGLRC Microstack. Now this is the F440-TX20.V2, catchy. This is a 20 by 20 microstack, and the reason this caught my interest is boasting some pretty incredible figures. This thing currently runs for about $105 at present, available on the HGLRC website, which I'll link in the description. So let's take a quick look at what's in the box before we do anything else. So we have a set of stickers to start things off. Good start, always like stickers. We have a manual here which looks to be the channel list and operational guide for the VTX, so there's that. We have a IPEX terminated whip antenna here. We have a standoff kit, and it looks like it's using long steel M2 screws rather than going for the individual standoff method, which is fine. That's nice and strong, so we got a set of those in there. We also have, let's see, a capacitor, which fills me with confidence to see a company going the extra mile and having the detail of adding a decent capacitor in. It does look to be a proper 105 degree low ESR capacitor, so that's good. This is 1000 microfarads at 35 volts, which is perfect for up to 4S, which this is rated to, so top marks for including that. And then it looks like we have the actual board in here. Now this is made up of the three components. At the bottom here we have the 4-in-1 ESC. Now this is a biiiig 32 running board, which is good news. In terms of its current handling, according to the website, this guy can handle 40 amps continuous and a 50 amp burst, so potentially they're saying this thing can handle up to 200 amps, which is just, I mean, that's colossal. I mean, really, can it do that? That's going to be an interesting one to test out. I would personally think this would get red hot doing so, but yeah, that's all for testing, I guess. The other thing that I have noticed here, which is quite interesting and a good feature, they have the two pins just on the edge here, which is for wiring the capacitor in, which is a nice little touch. And then there's a third pin which is just on the end here, and that is for Esc Telemetry. So great, they've added in the Esc Telemetry for this particular biiiig 32 board. That will be, of course, useful because I'll be able to monitor the temperature of this board when we build it into a rig and test it. So yeah, there we have the Esc. The next one down is the flight controller, and straight away I can see the OSD chip there. If we flip this over, there's the main CPU on top. This is it looks like it has a couple of spare UARTs. It's got a boot button right next to the USB plug, which is the best place for it, and it's a nice clicky push button, so good location there. There's been some nice thought to the layout. You've got everything on the edges of the pad in terms of what you wire to, and it is an F4 processor with a MPU 6000 in there. So yeah, so far kind of all my favorite things that I like to see. It does also have an onboard 5-volt regulator and will take a direct input up to 4S. Of course, this being as compact with components as it is, doesn't have a regulator on board, so this won't supply 5 volts. It will simply pass on the VBAT voltage. So if it's a 4S, it will pass on that 16.7 volts fully charged straight onto this, but this is rated to take that in and then convert that down to 5 volts for the rest of your gear with the onboard reg. Now these two connect via a pin. You can see there's pins on the top here and a receiver block here, so if I just plug those in, the only downside to this, which it's nice that it connects like that, it keeps wiring and soldering down to a minimum because you don't actually have to wire these two things together. The only downside is you're forced into the orientation the manufacturer saw fit. So in the case of this, if you want, obviously you're going to want the USB coming out the side. That also means your power is on the side. Personally, I always like to run the power straight out the back with most of my builds. And have the connections to the motor wires on the side, so they're easy to get to and take care of when you're replacing a motor, for instance. It just makes servicing quicker. So in the case of this, you'd have to sacrifice either the USB slot, which we can't sacrifice, you'd have to get a small extension to be able to get to it somewhere else on the quad, or you put up with the rotation being this way round. So personally I would prefer it 90 degrees round to that, but because of the location of the pins and the way they have to be wired, there's no other way to orientate that. That's a little negative side for me, but not the end of the world. Being a 20 by 20 stack, going in anything bigger, which this boasts it's capable of doing, even with it sideways and mounting in this way, there'll still be plenty of, if I had plenty of wire, I can still go to the back and not be out the side of the quadcopter. So that's where we are with those two, and then the final piece in the kit is here, which is the VTX, which goes on top. And if I just grab the specs just so I can have a look at those, they are, this will do 25 milliwatts, 100, 200 and 350 milliwatts, switchable, and it's controllable via an RX in, so you can use a spare UART TX from the board to go to here, and you can use the Betaflight OSD to switch channels. It does have a little push button on the side, so that's useful. You can actually, and it's got a little display on top here to tell you your various numbers and power settings, etc. And then you can see that little IPEX connector on top. So yeah, that's a pretty straightforward thing. Nice neat little package. The whole thing together weighs 11.5 grams, so really this is incredibly light and crazy powerful, if it does what the manufacturer claims. So for the money, I mean, that is expensive, but it is, if it does what it says it does, then it's quite an impressive piece of gear. One other thing worth noting on this F4 flight controller is they have included a 16 megabyte flash drive for black box recording, which I think is really useful and something you seldom see down on these tiny 20 by 20 stacks. So that's good news as well. Now, come on NJ, put your money where your mouth is. If you're going to be a responsible reviewer, and you guys are going to go out and spend your hard-earned cash on one of these, it's probably up to me to test the upper limits of this guy. So what I really need to do is put this into a proper amp pulling machine. So I have just the chap. This is the, no I'm kidding, we're not going to put it in that. This is my Archon 6-inch quadcopter. Now, you haven't seen this before on the channel, but of course if you follow me over on Instagram, and I'll put a link in the description to that, you would have seen this before. I tend to put all of the stuff that I'm building and stuff that arrives here usually goes straight up on Instagram. So if you want to be ahead of the game with terms of the channel, you can head over to my Insta and follow me there. Now this has been, I mean, I love this quad. This is a really pretty quad, and you know I love the Archon. It's my main freestyle as the 5-inch. Unfortunately, I've just been cursed with this build. I had so many issues despite it turning out looking absolutely beautiful, and the purpose of this was to be my kind of long range high flight time quad. You can see I've got the TBS Crossfire wired in here. Despite everything going together and looking beautiful, I've had a host of issues with this. I've just had a bunch of cursed parts. As soon as I got this thing flying, one of the ESCs blew on it, which is so rare for a SpedX ESC. Normally my SpedX ESCs have all been brilliant. In fact, this is the first one ever that has failed on me. But yeah, this is currently running a BL Heli 32 setup. I've got the Maytec F7 in there and the Maytec PDB VTX, which is down there. If I swing that round, you can see the PDB has the little MMCX connector, so which goes out to the back for the VTX. That's all built in. But yeah, I had problems with the ESCs. Finally got it all back together, and then I had a hideous noise problem, which after loads of testing and black boxing and messing around, I found out to be a bad gyro on my F7. So the next thing for me to do would be to replace the S7. And do you know what? I've just thought, why not use this as our test rig for putting in this little guy. Let's see whether this thing, which, and to be honest here, look, we've got 30 amp ESCs here. This is claiming they're 40 amp with a 50 amp burst, so this should handle this easily. I know this flies on these without problems, well, apart from the problems I mentioned for different reasons, but they can certainly handle the power and weight of this quadcopter no problem on 4S. So this guy should be able to do the same. Now, one thing that will work in favour of this stack is the fact that 11.5 grams, once we take out all 4 ESCs, the full size board, the full size PDB and VTX under there, we'll actually be shedding a fair bit of weight from this guy as well. So it will lose a bit of weight, and then we'll put this guy in, and I know we'll definitely be able to pull some proper amps and see whether this tiny little 20 by 20 11.5 gram stack can do the job. So the big question is, fly or fire? Let's find out.